right, episode 2 of the Coalition podcast. Jake and I have some new toys, and we're really excited about
Ready
it.
to roll, babe. We got intro music.
Yes, and it's also thundering and lightning outside, and we're wearing headphones currently at the moment. So if there's a lightning strike, this could be the shortest podcast in history.
Yeah.
We could get electrocuted. Do you think that'd be a good way to die? Electrocution?
You know, there's
Doing a podcast with me?
yeah, I mean we gotta go. I'd rather do that than be eaten or burned alive, I think.
Yeah.
I think drowning would also not be cool.
Drowning would be the worst.
I think electrocution might be the way to go.
I mean, it'd be fast. Literally, I read one time that drowning is one of the best ways to go, and I thought, there's no way.
Oh man.
Because you know there's a tragedy that's gotten you to that point.
Well, there's
right?
there's a point where you cannot hold your breath any longer, and you know that you're going to suck in all this water.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this is it,
Fear
and you're
in that
just
moment.
Dunsville.
Yeah.
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 Now I'm out on drowning.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Not at all. We really got off right out of the gate.
Right. No.
I mean,
I'm sure we'll do it again.
A wheel is already going down this way. No. All right. Well, today we're coming at you talking about a book that Jake and I both read called The Traveler's Gift. The idea of our whole podcast is just aimed at men for reflection. And this is a book that Jake and I have both read that caused us to reflect a lot. And I think it's good for us as men to stop and think a little bit. Men that we follow, that we listen to, that we respect in the culture tend to be thinkers. And you can't become a great thinker without reflecting. I mean, that's a skill I think that is required. Anyways, this book, The Traveler's Gift, was written by a man by the name of Andy Andrews. And the entire book is really an allegory of a gentleman named David Ponder. And David's just kind of a normal guy. He loses his job. His kids get sick. The bills start piling up. And he's kind of at the end of his rope, so to speak. And he has this vision where he travels through time, and he speaks to 7 different people in history, and they give him 7 decisions that he should make to turn his life around. And so we want to talk about one of those decisions today. Jake, you started reading this book not long ago. I read it several years ago. I mean, what kind of drew you to this book to begin with?
Well, I actually was. I work with a large auto group in Texas, and they're just they're an amazing organization. And the owner of that group is actually friends with the author, with Andy, and he does when the coronavirus pandemic came out, he actually had to cancel his leadership conference that he does every year for the people in his community, and they canceled that. But what he did in its place is he went and found guys that are terrific leaders, are people that have poured into him, whether it be in their books or personally, however it would have happened. But he's got relationships with a lot of people, and he had Andy Andrews on a podcast with him, just basically talking about several different things, talking about being a leader, talking about being a good human, talked about, his faith, kind of shared some stuff with his story. And the way this guy talks, he is, very charismatic. And it was just, he's so easy to listen to. And they referenced his book, and I really didn't know what it was about at all. I just knew that there were 7 points, and I knew that, hey, this guy is smart. He and the owner of this auto group, they're guys you want to be around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're guys that when they talk, you want to listen.
You want to listen.
And so I thought, you know what, I want to check that out. So I did, and it was amazing. I'm talking, I'll read it. I'll probably read it once a year. It's a very, 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 very good book. Super, super easy to read or listen to. I listen to a lot of books. He actually narrates his own books himself.
I did not know that.
So when you hear him or when you listen to it, you're getting that charismatic way of talk. And it's super, super easy to listen to. So.
Yeah, I've actually never listened to him or listened to one of his books. I've read several of his books, and I would say you need to read them, even if you're not a reader, because they are easy to read, and they will make you reflect. I want to start by just reading the first decision of success. So this fictional character, David Ponder, has an encounter with President Truman, and Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's actually the one that coined the expression "the buck stops here," right?
I believe so.
I think it was. Anyways, at the end of each chapter, it's basically just a first-person statement, a commitment that you're going to make to a certain decision. And the first one is the decision for success. The buck stops here. And here's what it says. From this moment forward, I will accept responsibility for my past. I understand that the beginning of wisdom is to accept the responsibility for my own problems, and that by accepting responsibility for my past, I free myself to move into a bigger, brighter future of my own choosing. Never again will I blame my parents, my spouse, my boss, or other employees for my present situation. Neither my education nor lack of one, my genetics, or the circumstantial ebb and flow of everyday life will affect my future in a negative way. I will not allow myself to blame others for uncontrollable forces and the lack of my success. I will be forever caught up in the web of the past if I do that. I will look forward. I will not let my history control my destiny. The buck stops here. I accept responsibility for my past. I am responsible for my success. I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially, because of the decisions I've made. My decisions have always been governed by my thinking. Therefore, I am where I am today, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, and financially, because of how I think. Today, I will begin the process of changing where I am mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and financially by changing the way I think. My thoughts will be constructive, never destructive. My mind will live in the solutions for the future. It will not dwell on the problems of the past. I will associate with those who are working and striving to bring about positive changes in the world. I will never seek comfort by associating with those who decide to be comfortable. That's good. When faced with an opportunity to make a decision, I will make one. I understand that God did not put me in the. I understand that God did not put in me the ability to always make the right decisions. He did, however, put in me the ability to make a decision and then to make it right. The rise and fall of my emotional tide will not deter me from my course. When I make a decision, I will stand behind it. My energy will go into making the decision. I will not waste a second thought. My life will not be an apology. It will be a statement. The buck stops here. I control my thoughts. I control my emotions. In the future, when I'm tempted to ask the question, why me? I will immediately counter with the answer, why not me? Challenges are gifts, opportunities to learn. Problems are a common thread running through the lives of great men and women. In the times of adversity, I do not have a problem I have to deal with. I will have a choice to make. My thoughts will be clear. I will make the right choice. Adversity is preparation for greatness. I will accept this preparation. Why me? Why not me? I will be prepared for something great. I accept responsibility for my past. I control my thoughts. I control my emotions. I am responsible for my success. The buck stops here. Man, like that's a great decision to make.
Yeah.
Do you think that's the mindset of the average American male today?
Not at all. No. For a lot of reasons, I kind of have something that I think of a lot, and we say it in my house, and it's nothing worth it is easy. Mm-hmm. And accepting responsibility for where you're at is not easy.
No.
And society and culture, and I mean, we can blame all kinds of stuff, but at the end of the day, we like easy. That's the way that our it's kind of the American way, I guess. I don't know. And we want to be able to point the finger outward instead of inward. Mm-hmm. And no, I don't think that that's the average guy's tendency at all. Mm-hmm. And it's because it's hard.
Yeah, I think the reality is probably all of us at some point have deflected responsibility.
Sure, we have. Absolutely have. And when you're doing it, you think of all the reasons why you're validated, but at the end of the day, or at the end of whatever it is you're going through, you're not. Mm. It's something that you just have. It's harder to say, okay, what could I have done different, or what do I need to do? How do I fix this? Mm-hmm. Because when you can blame somebody else, then it's all of a sudden not your problem. It's an excuse for whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Somebody else did this.
Somebody else did
Or
this.
this happened because something else, some outside force. It wasn't my fault that this happened. So yeah, I mean.
No, you're absolutely right. You know what I love about how Andy wrote this? He wrote it in such a way that no matter how you've lived in the past, you can change today.
Yes.
Everything is about today.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting. I do want to tell all the listeners kind of who Andy Andrews is. He was actually homeless as a young man. I don't know if you know this or not, Jake, but when he was, I think it was about 18 or 19.
Yeah. His mother died, I want to say from illness. And then it wasn't long after that.
Yeah.
I think a matter of months, inside of a year maybe, that his father was killed in a car accident tragically, and he didn't have, he didn't have a stable full of people he could call.
No.
It was on him to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
And
he ended up under a pier, homeless.
Yeah.
And he said that there was a guy walking down the street one day while he was sitting under that pier, and he looked at him and he said, "Young man, you are sitting here because you want to be here."
Right.
And he said that ticked him off. And so he figured out that he could go to a library just to get inside, and he read, I think it was 300 biographies in a matter of about a year or two.
It's a huge number.
Yeah, massive number. And he noticed a pattern of 7 things that those successful people did, which was obviously the origin and the genesis of this book. Yeah. The buck stops here. So you're talking about a man who's writing this decision, saying today you can change your life, and he's writing that from a place of experience because he was there.
That's right.
As a homeless man, he realized I can take responsibility. It's not anybody's fault that my parents died. It's my fault that I'm underneath this pier. I think that's great. There's a quote in the book. It says, "You have to choose. You have chosen the pathway to your present destination. The responsibility for your situation is yours." So do you really believe that an individual's present state is solely determined by their personal choice and responsibilities?
Yeah, I do. We serve a gracious God, that that wants us to be successful and wants to bless us. But we've got to be willing to take some sort of action. I do believe that, it doesn't matter why you're in that position. You had something to do with it. I mean, if you're grown. Yeah. I do believe that.
Yeah. I do think there is a reality that certain people have an easier starting point, maybe.
I'll agree with that for sure.
I mean, there's no doubt that there's people in situations in extreme poverty and things like that. I think they might have a harder launching pad or a lower launching pad, maybe. I don't know. I do like what he said though in the book, and we'll talk about it in a little bit though. That struggle and challenges are preparation for my future success.
Yeah, for something bigger.
It seems like there are people, especially in America, that the lower they started, sometimes they rise higher than people who had it easier because that resistance created something inside of them.
Yes. I mean, I would imagine, and I've not read this or heard him talk about it, but I would imagine that, where he came from has I'm sure he attributes a lot of that to his success because he's got a drive instilled in him that otherwise wouldn't have been there.
No doubt.
And I would imagine that he would give that credit, and I'm sure that he has. I just haven't ran across it yet. But he references that anybody can do this, but I mean, he wakes up with a purpose every day. This guy.
Yep, no doubt. And the reason why he has that purpose is because he's taking responsibility for his own situation.
That's right.
You know what I mean? And I do think, when we talk about taking responsibility, I think a lot of people resist that because it is hard, but it also places the blame on you, But what it also does is there's a good side to that, and that is freeing, meaning now I can choose what I want tomorrow to look like, and I can choose the purpose I'm going to live for. And I think that's a great thing. There's another quote in the book. It says, "Our thinking creates a pathway to success or failure." So can you remember a particular instance when your thinking created success or when your thinking led to failure?
I think the one thing that the one thing that comes to mind for me is I was my wife and I were dating at the time, and I was working at a Pizza Hut, and I was going to college, and I absolutely hated school. I mean, my whole life I hated school, and I hated college.
Yeah.
And I did not want to do it anymore, and I knew what I wanted to be successful at something, and I felt like I had the work ethic to do it. And I just opened up an ad, and there was an ad in there for a car salesman, and I thought I can do that, and I don't know what made me think that I could do that. Obviously, I'd never been a salesman.
Yeah.
I'd never done anything. I mean, I feel like I could argue pretty good.
Yeah.
But outside that, I had no experience whatsoever, and I just kind of knew that I could go in and I could get the job, for starters.
Yeah.
And then I thought I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know that it would end up being my career, but I got in there and I noticed that there was a way that I could provide a life, and so I just kept my head down and worked.
So yeah, it did then.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
thinking. Yeah. I was thinking about that a little bit. I've kind of the same way you are. My thought process has always been, if I get in any situation, I can figure it out.
Right.
And I will work harder than everybody else to figure it out.
Right.
And that has created some success. I think there's no doubt every single failure I've had in life leads back to my own ignorance and my own thinking. And a lot of times that thinking has been as a result of arrogance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think in some ways arrogance is a deflection of responsibility, because you're not taking responsibility for the decision or the situation you're in the moment, and you think you don't have to worry about it. You're so good, you don't have to.
You're above it.
You're above it,
Yeah.
and I think so. Yeah, there's no doubt. Have you had a failure instance, you think?
I failed so much. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, all of it. Not a lot of it, but all of it has to do with my thought. Last time we talked, I talked a little bit about finances and how I got carried away with the way that we spent money, that I spent money, not we, because when you're a husband, you set the tone for the house.
Yep.
And like it or not, that's our responsibility, and that's just what you do, whether you are or you're not.
Yep.
That's what you're doing, and I set the tone for my house that nothing but the best for me, Clark.
Nothing but the best, Clark.
And
yeah.
And it's that's just not the way that it can't be sustained.
Yeah, it kind of adds up after a while.
There's a point where it can't be sustained.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've made, and it all has to do with my warped way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I've definitely been on both sides of the fence for sure.
My bad thinking decisions tend to come in relation to my wife, like things I say to her before I think about it.
Right.
We won't go down that road because we'll be here the rest of the night. Probably my favorite quote from that decision: "Why not me?" Man, so many people ask, "Why me? Why not me?" And what stuck out to me about that is that a victim mentality is complete bondage on you. Right? I mean, it's like throwing shackles on your life.
Yeah.
And the greatest thing that God gave us was the ability to make a decision and to think. I mean, that separates us from every other creature that God created. And it's our ability to make a decision that leads to our salvation, that leads to our successes or our failures. It leads to our happiness and our joy. And so by stepping back and saying, why not me? Bring it on. I'm not going to be a product of my environment.
Right.
I think that's just absolutely huge. So what do you think, Jake? I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think challenges are gifts? And have you experienced a challenge that turned into a gift in your own life?
Oh, goodness, yeah, for sure. I do think they are, but here's the tough thing is harnessing your attitude and your mindset when a challenge presents itself.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to, I don't think that you're going to think that every time a challenge comes my way, I'm like, oh, goody, I get to learn.
No, of course not. Nope.
But I can think of a handful of things that, have taught me, of challenges that have taught me, a bunch, personally and professionally. You mentioned the "why not me" statement as being the one that spoke to you the most out of that, and it's mine as well. But part of why this book spoke to me so much is because of the stage that it sets in this guy's life. I mean, it opens up with the guy getting out of a taxi cab in his front yard and him just sitting down in the grass, knowing that that life as he knows it is over. And it's because he got fired from a job that, he spent a ton of time at and worked himself into an upper management position. And, he sacrificed a lot for his job. And sacrificed time at home, and because not because he was making a conscious decision to do it, but because he thought he was doing the right thing.
Yeah,
and it was gone.
Yep,
it was gone. And when that happens, it takes a man and a half to go, why not me?
Yep.
When you just lost your ability to provide for your family. You don't even have a car to drive because you're driving a company car.
Yep.
You don't have insurance. Your credit cards are maxed out. You don't have savings. You got to borrow money from your dad to get a car.
Yep.
The guy goes and gets a job at a hardware store, paying an hourly wage. And, I mean, he's working at full time at this job at that hourly wage. It doesn't even come close to cracking the guy's nut. Every month, what he needs to make. I mean, it doesn't. To stand there, and I'm not trying to give away everything in the book, but his daughter has been sick for a few days, and it turns out she needs her tonsils removed. They don't have insurance. His credit cards are maxed out. They don't have savings. He did not come from wealth. His parents are not wealthy. I think he borrowed $400 for the car he's driving from his dad. They're tapped out. I'm sure that hurt his dad. And his baby, she's not a baby, but his daughter is sick. And while he's on the phone with his wife, getting the information from urgent care, saying, hey, she's sick. The only thing that's going to fix this if we get her tonsils out. That's what's making her sick. And they're talking through, what are we going to do? His boss says, hey, you need to get off the phone. Hey, you need to get off the phone. Hey, you need to get off the phone. And, he's trying to sort this out. Hangs up with his wife, gets fired from the hardware store.
Bad thing after bad thing.
Walking out to your $400 car whose brake lights don't work after losing your second job, can't help your daughter, can't help your wife, to stand there and say, why not me?
Yeah.
It'd
be tough.
Super tough. Super tough. So it's not an easy one, and I understand why he started with this one, because if you can get where you make yourself and train yourself to think that way, it's going to change the way you look at the next six, and you're going to be better for it. But nothing worth it's easy, and that is not easy.
That's not easy. You know what is really interesting to me is the one universal thing that we all have in common is that everybody has had bad things happen in their life.
Every single person.
Terrible things.
Sure.
Think about Abraham Lincoln. His son died right before he got into office, or it was right there about the same time. So, he's fighting a war. He's leading the country while it's trying to split into two, and his son is dead. His wife is facing severe depression, and he has to lead through that.
Right.
You start digging in, behind the veil for some of these people that we would idolize as doing great things, and maybe even we thought they've had it easy. Almost every single one of them have had terrible tragedy in their life. And it almost seems that some people, the worse the tragedy, the higher they rise. And I think it's ultimately because tragedy creates resistance, and anything that's going to get stronger has to face resistance. So if you're wanting to work out and get stronger, you have to lift weights. Well, mechanically speaking, what you're trying to do is push against resistance.
Right.
And as you push against that resistance, it actually tears your muscles a little bit. There's actually a breaking down first, and that's why you get sore afterwards, because you've wounded your body. But it grows back and it grows more muscle than it had before.
Right.
Because it's trying to recover so that it can overcome that resistance next time.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's working out or if it's losing your job or if it's, getting sick, all those things create resistance. And if you look out into the world, you can find somebody who's gone what you've gone through. And the reality is you can look and find somebody who's gone through something worse than you're going through.
Sure.
So by taking ownership, I think it just sets you free. In another book that Andy wrote, he told a story or recounted a story that's pretty common of George Washington at Fort Necessity. In 1754, Washington, he was young. He's leading his first command at Fort Necessity in the French and Indian War. And he actually gets in a skirmish. He has 350 men with him. And they get in a skirmish and they get driven back to Fort Necessity. And while they're there, a lot of his men get drunk, and the fort was in a terrible position. It was surrounded by hills, and so militarily speaking, it was just a terrible place of tactics. And in this battle, 30 of his men get killed, 80 get wounded, and Washington ends up having to surrender his sword and sign articles at night by candlelight, giving up. So his very first command, he loses. I mean, we see him as the first president, the leader of the colonial army that gets the American Revolution, yet his very first military campaign as a commander, he loses. The amazing thing is they said that he never had a victim mentality for that, and he never made an excuse for why he lost. And he had a lot. I mean, hey, you put me in a fort that was terribly positioned, was terrible tactics. My men were getting drunk. I mean, he had a lot of things that were working against him, but he never made excuses for that. Fast forward to the American Revolution. It's interesting to note that Washington used a lot of the same guerrilla tactics that were used against him in that battle.
Wow.
So the guerrilla tactics used by the Native Americans against him is the exact same tactics he copied against the British Army, and it ultimately led him, to victory. So when you take responsibility for failure, really that failure can become a classroom of success, and Washington saw that. So when you're talking about taking responsibility in life and going with this resistance and overcoming it, there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, the reality is a lot of us, we face bad things and we can't change them. And I think that's what, Andrews is trying to get in this book. You're going to have tragedy come against us, all of us, and there's not one thing we can do to change it. We, by and large, we can't change when we get sick or not. Right. We can't change when the economy collapses. I mean, we're in the middle of this COVID thing. Yeah. None of us can change any of that. But what we can do is choose how we respond to it. And I know I've responded poorly a lot, but this inspires me to do it the right way. The other thing I think is really interesting is he kind of gets at this concept in there, taking responsibility for where your life is going. So kind of a fun question, Jake, do you have a bucket list? I mean, things that you want to check off in your life?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff I want to do. There's things professionally I want to do. I want to own a business. And a successful business. I don't want to, I don't just want to have one. I want to own a business that'll provide for my family.
Making some money.
I want to learn about real estate. I want to get into that some. And, one of the things I want to do is I want to go on a trip on motorcycles for a few days. I want to go do that. That's on my bucket list. And another thing that's fun is when my kids are old enough, I want that to be something that the three of us get to go and do together. That's something that I want to do. And I could probably go all night. There's a lot of living that I want to do.
Yeah. And I think when we're talking about taking responsibility, it's not just the bad stuff. It's taking responsibility to make the good stuff happen.
Yeah.
You mentioned, taking a motorcycle ride with your sons. Like, if you don't take responsibility to make sure that happens, it is not going to happen.
That's right.
They're not going to make it happen. You're going to be the one that has to make that happen.
That's right. So during this time of the pandemic, I guess, my son a year ago, we tried to teach him how to ride his bicycle, and it didn't go well. I mean, it just didn't. He fell and he didn't want to do it anymore. He didn't want to try anymore, and we didn't push through it. We gave up, and okay, you don't have to, and that was not the right thing to do, because you look up in a year later and all his buddies know how to ride a bike and he can't.
Yep.
So, we got him out there on the pavement, and you know, it was it was tough for a while. I mean, you know, there were tears shed, and there was you know, knees skinned up, and you know, there was parents tapping out.
Talk about some pain.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you got to make him get hurt to learn how to do it. I got a the day after we started that deal, I got a video message from my wife, and it was of him riding his bike by himself.
There you go.
Just bawling his eyes out.
Yeah,
because his mom had just put something on him, you know, because he was, you know, he didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But now you can't hardly pry him off the deal.
Yeah.
And I told him that, you know, when we were learning, I was like, I have a dream, and my dream is for me, you, and your brother to get on Harley Davidsons, and this be a pastime that we do.
Yep.
And the boys like riding the bike, you know. And I said, is that something that you would want to do with me? Yeah. Well, guess what? You cannot ride a motorcycle if you cannot pedal a bike. So, yeah, I mean, you are the one that has to make it happen. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's what's fun about some of this stuff. You know, a lot of times we talk about taking responsibility. It's just the bad stuff, the bad stuff, the bad stuff. No, you get to take responsibility for the good stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You get to take responsibility to say, hey, here's my dreams. Here's what I want to look like spiritually in life. I'm going to make that happen. You know, here's what I want my relationships to look like. I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah.
I want to have a certain emotional health and outlook. I'm going to make that happen. Yeah. There's a certain place I want to be financially. I'm going to make that happen. There's certain skill sets I want to, you know, and so I think some of this stuff can actually be exhilarating, and it can be intoxicating and exciting when you do it the right way and you look at it from that perspective. You know, so when you have that life vision or those bucket list things, you know, you got to ask yourself, who do I need to become to get there?
That's
right. Know? And I think that's a really important thing. You know, one of the things that talking about bucket list stuff, you know, I want to take my son on a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Manhood's really important.
I heard you mention that before.
Yeah. So I read this other book one time from a guy by the name of Bob Goff, and when his kids turned 10 years old, he set them down and said, we're going to go on an adventure. What do you want to do? And it was asked just like that. So whatever the kids said, that's what they did. His daughter was the first one turned 10, and she says, I want to have a tea party in London. He said, okay. He bought a plane ticket. Him and his daughter went out there. They had tea, saw, you know,
the sites?
Yeah, the sites. I don't know any of the sites over there. Yeah.
Big Ben.
Big Ben. Anyways, they came home. You know, his son turned 10. He said, hey, what do you want to do? And his son said, I want to climb Mount Hood. And apparently they did that all the time. He said, well, that's not an adventure. We do that all the time. He says, I want to do it in a blizzard. And so they waited for a blizzard, and he took his 10-year-old son. Maybe not responsible, I don't know. But when I heard that, I thought, you know what, that's part of the problem in America, is that we don't have rites of passage. We don't know when boys become men.
Right.
And so I decided I have 4 things that I'm going to do with Knox between 10 and 14. Yeah. And the first one is there's a Upper Blue Lake in Colorado. I've never been there. I've seen pictures of it. It looks amazing. And I'm going to hike him to the top of that, you know, so 10 years old. But
that's cool.
Yeah, I digress. So, you know, you have to ask, who do I want to become to get there? Albert Einstein said this quote, and I don't know if you've heard this, but I wanted to lay it on you. You cannot solve a problem with the same consciousness that created it. And so when we're talking about taking responsibility, we have these life visions, these life goals, these things we want to do. And then Einstein says, you can't solve that problem. You're not going to get there with the same consciousness that created the problems or got you here. You know, what does that quote mean to you? And what do you think that means in the bigger picture of responsibility?
I've not heard that before, but what it makes me think of is that you need to rely on some other folks. You need to surround yourself with people that are wise, and that you need to dip into their mind, and you need to seek their counsel. You know, I've got, our relationship, for instance, you know, I would consider you to be wise, and we think differently. We think a lot alike in a lot of ways, but, you know, you think different on some things. So, you know, there'll be times when, you know, I need to bounce something off of you. You know, I've got a mentor. I talk to him every day, and, it probably drives him nuts, but I basically bounce everything except for the color underwear I'm going to wear that day off of him.
Yeah, you probably don't want to go there.
And it's because, I I want to be like that guy. You know, I want to be like these guys that are better guys than me. And I think what that's saying is that you're not by yourself, and that you need to find other people that will pour into you to help you through life's problems.
Yep, no doubt. So in the big scheme of things, there are a very, very, very small group of people who I think do all this stuff right. Right. The average person lives the average life, and they get the average results. Below that, they feel like a victim, and they live the subpar life, right? And then there's some people who are at the top who, and it's not just about money or power, it's about life. Like, they've lived the full life. And it's because they have thought differently. I mean, you and I have met those type of people where, I mean, Andy Andrews is one of them, right? He just has a different outlook. He thinks different than everybody else. And I think that's a learned skill. I don't think you're born with that. I think you have to learn it. And I think you're right. The only way you can learn that skill is by surrounding yourself with people who think differently.
Yeah.
You know, you and I talked about this one time. We have a mutual friend that needed some dirt work done, and he looked up and saw how expensive it was going to be to hire and to rent an excavator.
Yeah.
It was a track hoe.
Yeah.
And he realized I could go buy one and then turn around and sell it and spend less on what I would lose than what it would cost me to rent it. Those type of things are different.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
It absolutely blew my mind when I heard that. I was, I never in my wildest dreams would have thought, hang on a minute, I can go spend X amount of dollars every day and run that deal and pay them to use their stuff, or I'll just go buy it myself, use it. When I'm done, I'll just sell it for what I had in it, or maybe make a little.
Yeah. Never would have thought that.
I never would have thought it. And I mean, it's just amazing, and it's small things like that, that can shape what happens to you later.
No joke.
I mean, it's crazy to me that you learn every day. But yeah, that's a great story.
Yeah. Well, it's a grid of thinking. It's a whole different process.
It is, and I'll have that with me forever.
Exactly.
I'll remember where I was at when. Hey man, why do you have that backhoe out there? Oh, well, I just didn't want to spend X amount of dollars every day, and I needed to get this, and this done. So I just bought one.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm selling it.
Yep.
Because I'm done.
Yeah. It's about learning.
Yeah.
There was this guy one time I was helping when I was in high school. This gentleman had a lot of money, wore the same 3 T-shirts. They were all old from the church every day, drove an old truck. You never know he had money.
Yeah.
Right. And anyways, I was helping him move into his new massive house that his wife wanted built, and has brand new appliances from Sears, back when Sears was the thing. And we're moving it in it. And he's telling me, he said, man, the Lord was with me. He said, I was able to go down to Sears, and I was able to buy all these appliances at 0% for a year. And he says, I got all these fields around me. I'm going to brush beat those fields. I'm going to pay off all these appliances before next year. And I thought, and I knew the guy's name. I thought, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
This gentleman one time came up to me. We're going on a missions trip. And he said, how much is it going to take for you to go on that mission trip? I said, well, we got $10,000. He said, it's in the bank. Don't worry about it. Wrote the check right then. Didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he's going to brush beat pastures to pay for his appliances.
Yeah.
It's a different way of thinking.
It is.
You know what I mean? And so, I think you're right. If we're going to take responsibility, not just for the bad things, but for the good things to get where we need to go, we absolutely have to change our thinking, and that's really what Andy Andrews is getting at. I think the other thing that you can do to change your thinking is read a lot. I mean, I know I really didn't set out to have the first 2 podcasts talk about books, that's kind of by accident. But the reality is that there are some very wise people out there. And why would you give away something for free when you can sell it?
Sure.
There's a lot of truth to that. And so there's a lot of wisdom in books. And the thing about books is they're timeless. And there's some timeless wisdom out there that you can really absorb by reading. And I think that's a good thing to take responsibility for. It's a discipline that can really be a benefit, because none of us are smart enough. And so, Yeah, with that, it's a great book. You guys should really read The Traveler's Gift. Jake, you got anything else to add to that? Or
I mean, just seconding what you said, even if you don't read, this book is not like, not like a self-help book in the way that, it lists out this stuff and gives you all these things. I mean, it literally is a story, and it has true meaning, and it definitely will speak to you. And if you don't read, this would be a great one for you to start.
Yeah, this would be a good starting point. And the thing about it is, too, is that it's all low-hanging fruit. Since it's about decisions, every single one of us have a mind.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can read the book, then you have the cognitive ability to make decisions.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can apply these. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a multimillionaire or if you have, negative dollars in the bank because you have so much debt. I mean, it's something that anybody can pick up and take on. We might cover another decision or two out of the book. There's some fascinating stories that this is based upon, but I'd encourage you to pick that up. Really, anything from Andy Andrews is amazing. The accompanying book to it, which is a little bit more, it's not a story, it's a little bit more the backstory, the research, if you will, for that book is called The 7 Decisions. Both of them are great. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, episode number 2, and we will catch you guys next time. So be looking for that. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube. You can also look up J First Assembly on SoundCloud, iTunes, and Google Play, and you can find our podcast and our content. God bless and have a great day.